We are on a webinar for learning about helping your overweight child, mindful eating and body positive. Thank you for those who have joined us tonight, and thank you to those who are watching the playback later. So let's jump in and feel free to ask any questions as we go along. I am a little bit about myself. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I've worked 8 years as a clinical dietitian, 9 years in the food allergy prevention industry with Nestle and Nutricia North America. And I've been in private practice for 2 years called Portland Pediatric Nutrition. I have offices in Portland and Vancouver, Washington. My most important job is being a mom to 2 young kiddos, 3 and 8. In my spare time, I enjoy cooking with my kids, and we enjoy lots of hikes in our neighborhood. I love yoga, road biking also. So let's jump into our objectives tonight. We're going to learn how you as a parent can help be helpful without causing weight shame in your overweight child, and how to promote positive body image in your child, and how to help your child listen to their hunger cues and eat more mindfully. And we're also going to review typical and healthy growth patterns during puberty and childhood. So child growth, and first off, we're going to look at what is typical with your child growing. And I just first want to start off with really showing that it's really individual, and it's influenced by genetics, nutrition. There's environmental factors that influence your child's growth, and certainly physical factors. So it's certainly, we can't predict that from a young age how your child will grow. All children are born with their own genetic blueprints for their growth, and as long as they trend along the same curve, they're likely healthy and normal. So between the ages of 2 and 10, you'll see a real steady growth, and this is when you should see a child trending and not really jumping. Perhaps they're growing on the 20th percentile or perhaps the 30th, but you're not really seeing them going from the 20 to the 30 to the 40th percentile over a course of a few years. You may see some gradual changes over the years. Maybe they're born around the 20th, but as they get middle school, they're more set around the 50th percentile. Even if they're growing around the 95th or above the 95th percentile, if they're consistently growing, then that's a healthy trend for them. Where we'll see the most jumps is when kids hit puberty, and they won't be trending on a normal growth curve, and it may not be unusual to see them jump a few levels, such as for girls, especially during puberty. Girls on average start puberty at 12 years, and it could be anywhere between 8 and 13 years. And for girls, they accumulate fat in order to start their menstrual cycle. And growth typically stops around the age of 16, and so girls about as tall as they're going to be, but they'll be putting on about 35 pounds during this period of puberty that lasts about 2 years. And so they'll typically fill out before they shoot up. So they'll start putting on some fat and accumulating that, and may not really grow in height until afterwards. So I often get calls, and it's alarming for parents to see this sometimes, not knowing that this is just normal, healthy growth. And for boys, it's similar, as in it starts a little bit later, so on average at 14 years, and this will last up until they're about 19 years of age, so it lasts longer. And peak growth, and boys normally lose fat, and they're gaining muscle during this time, so muscle weighs more than fat, so they're not losing weight, but they're gaining weight during this time, and boys will gain about 45 pounds during this period of time. So a lot of growth happening, and here's another chart that's a little bit more visual that will show yearly growth, and you can see that a preschooler on average grows 2 to 2.5 inches a year and 5 pounds a year. So that's preschool, steady growth, preschool to grade school and beginning of middle school. And when kids hit puberty, as you saw in the earlier slide, it can be as early as 10 years of age. Then you'll see girls growing a lot faster and putting on, and boys too, and also the weight will put on a lot more than they were typically putting on when they're younger. So this is good to know, just of what is expected. And so the question is, what could be the cause of this excessive weight gain in children? And if you're concerned because your child is not in puberty, and perhaps they're jumping some numbers on the curve where they're shooting up between 50th, 60th, and 70th quickly, then let's ask some of these questions. And some of these questions are: has their diet changed? Do they have access to more high calorie foods? And sometimes I see this if children, perhaps now they come home and they have access to make their own snack, or open up the cupboards and eat whatever they want when they get home from school, because maybe mom's not home when they get home, and or maybe they have more access to fast food, or they are at a school where they're going out to restaurants, or eating more fast food choices. So a lot of it's just overall diet. How is that changing? Looking at exercise and activity changes. A lot of times I see like the younger kids go from doing a lot of sports in grade school and middle school. Sometimes they're more interested in computer games and their iPod. So some of that changing as in more active to sedentary, and looking at those big changes for kids. Bullying at school is there's some research linking this to weight gain, the stress that it causes children with bullying. So I really try to dig in and find out if this is going on. It causes children a lot of stress and anxiety, and this is linked to body shame and increased eating related to that stress. And if you suspect your child hiding and sneaking food, due to often, if you do find wrappers in their room and they're hiding food, likely it's not the first time that they're doing this. Sometimes this happens if their diet is restricted and they're feeling like they're not getting enough, so they're sneaking food. If there's emotional eating going on, if there has been a stressor in the family, perhaps a divorce, a death, the bullying at school, and food is becoming a way to help with the emotions, then this is certainly a reason the child will be eating more than they normally need to. Certainly medications can cause a child's appetite to increase. Steroids causes appetites to increase. And genetics. There are certainly, the way a child grows is a lot about the parents and how they grew, and that's can help answer a lot of questions when I talk to parents about their experience, or what they know about their growth as a child. So what not to do, and on here I want to mainly talk about some of the things not to do that is based on some research that shows they only do more harm than good. So what not to do is don't talk about it. And definitely this ends up causing the body shame that research has shown leads to a child's increased anxiety and ending up overall eating more. So don't talk about it and make them ashamed of their weight, or don't even make it an issue that they have a problem. And don't restrict their food intake. This causes children to be more obsessed with food when they feel they aren't getting enough to eat and or are being restricted. And so there's definitely research to link this feeling of a child obsessing over food when it's limited. Don't talk negatively about yourself, and because remember, you are a mirror image to your child, and by talking negatively about yourself really reflects on how the child feels about themselves and their own body, and their own body image. So think about what you're saying about yourself and how that your child internalizes that. The positive things to focus on is family meals, limiting fast foods and eating on the go. So the more meals that people sit down to eat together, the family at the table, the research shows children are more likely to eat more vegetables and to slow down while eating, and so they're satisfying the appetite more slowly and eating less overall, and filling up on fruits and vegetables at a family meal rather than eating on the go. So there's good benefits to eating together, and health is one of the important ones. And what to focus on and promote mindfulness at meals, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a future slide. Offer healthy meals and snacks, and the 80 to 90% of the time there's still room for fun foods, and serve foods with staying power, and I'll dig into what staying power and what I mean by that in another slide. And what you also should be focusing on: reducing overall added sugar in your child's diet. A child on average about 40 to 50 grams per day, and this is based on the dietary guidelines of what's recommended of about 10% of their total calorie goals with sugar or less, 10% or less. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, recommends 60 minutes of activity per day. And I know my daughter gets PE twice a week. So certainly it's good to just know how much activity your child's getting. And it's great when schools have recess about twice a day, but that may only be two 10-minute recesses. So just I know 60 minutes of activity is tough, especially in the winter months, and especially if you live in Oregon or Washington, then it gets a lot of rain. So dance parties and getting them moving and trying other activities to keep them moving is really important for young kids. And positive self-talk and promote positive body image, and that's really, really the overall big picture here. Is because I don't, you know, it's certainly kids come in all sizes, and accepting their own size is really the most important thing for children to have, is just confidence about themselves. And so let's focus more here on mindfulness and what I mean by helping your child be a mindful eater. And so the first thing is I go back to a philosophy that was originally coined by Ellen Satter. She's a dietitian and a counselor, and she's been around since the 90s. She was certainly the first go-to that I would pull out her books and refer to. And she has work that has been proven to work with kids when it comes to feeding and that feeding relationship. And she's coined the term division of responsibility. And what that means is the parent's role to decide the what, when, and where of eating, and it's the child's to decide the how much and of what items. So it's really important to have that division in the household. Let a child be responsible for their own bodies and their own self-feeding and how much they want to eat, and their own hunger cues. So certainly it's parents' job to do the shopping, plan the meals, and put the food on the table. And it's up to the child to decide how much they're going to eat and of what items on the table. So that really helps that mindfulness part. So it's not your job as a parent to tell your child you've eaten too much, you should stop eating, or you should eat more, you need this, you need something green. So certainly setting a good example is always important, and eating the same foods yourself that you're encouraging for your kids, or getting them involved. There's so much more to this topic about how to get them involved to be part of that. But just knowing that it's up to them to control what their own bodies eat. Offer snacks and meals with staying power, and I'm going to dig into what staying power is in the upcoming slides. And for older children, check in on their hunger scale, hunger and fullness. And I often use like a ruler in my practice when I have more so digging into this with teenagers, of what that is, a hunger scale. And with this visual, I have how you can see if you're a -8, you're painfully hungry, and then you could be a +8, you can be painfully full, or we never want to be painfully hungry or painfully full. So we really want to check in with ourselves. And for those who need a little snack before they get to that point of being painfully hungry, and especially because you're in that danger zone, you're more likely to overeat and eat really fast. So I really talk to kids about how it's important to be aware of where they are on the scale. It's like a gas gauge, and they don't want to fill the tank too full, and they don't want to end up on empty. And so families that can have this conversation at the dinner table, where everyone comes to the table at a different level on their gas tank, and that's why people need different amounts of food. So just being aware and starting that mindfulness of what that means is great to start young with kids, of how hungry are you, and of sometimes it's just giving a ruler on a scale 1 to 5, and really really hungry, and so then that just kind of helps them get used to comparing it, or just thinking more about it. Oh, really, I'm not really hungry, but it just tastes good. So it's good to get that awareness at a young age. So promoting body positive, so important in our children. And the number one is talk kindly to yourself, ban fat talk in your family. Kids who don't think their parents like their own bodies end up not liking their own. And so there's certainly research on this, of kids later on who have weight problems reflect back to always feeling like there's a lot of negative fat talk in the household. So there's certainly, not talking badly about being fat. It's just, it is, using fat is a descriptive word. It's not a bad word. And unfortunately, our society doesn't always put it that way, as in the shows we watch and making fun of fat people on TV. So trying to get away from describing someone. So that goes to the next one is don't compliment your child on how they look, their physical size and appearance, and focus on their talents, characters, traits, and behavior. And get in the habit of describing others based on their qualities versus appearances too. So telling your child, spending more time finding ways to say, great job of how you're doing in school. I really admire what a great friend you are. I saw the way you were sharing, and you're such a wonderful friend to Susie Q, and and you're so smart. You continue to get good grades, and 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 really focusing on those on qualities of just even like how strong you are, and you're so determined and to be, and so getting that with kids of good qualities and complimenting them on that, or even when you're describing someone in their class, and never specifying that fat boy that sits in your class next to you. Maybe it's more of that boy in class that's really quiet, and I saw him yesterday. He was wearing the red hat, and do you know what I'm talking about? Like, or the boy that certainly the one that's always has a great smile on his face, and has the best curly hair, and really making positive statements about other features in children that you describe, that you're talking to your children about. Minimize exposures to stereotypes in media and toys, and discuss with children common stereotypes when you see them. And this is really hard because it's everywhere. I know for me, an example is, even I'm not a big fan of Barbie with my girls and them having Barbies, but I've had people over the years give my children Barbies, and making kind of jokes of them like, wow, they're really going to be cold in these bikinis, or Ariel, we don't really have anything to fit her, because we don't really, this is not really this is a normal size. His bodies aren't shaped like this, and so we don't have things to clothes to fit her, and pointing out that this is not how bodies are shaped, and wearing little tiny bikinis are not really practical, or just making joke of it, or just bringing it to light that it's not normal, is almost better. Even um, or always having girls do pink and princes, and boys doing trucks and hero superheroes, and bring it all together, of letting bringing those, getting your girls the superhero characters, and or finding more girl superheroes, and which is great that they're doing more of that. I love that we had Wonder Woman this year, and Wonder Woman's having a comeback. Um, and avoid negative food talk is a real big one, as in talking about food as fuel versus good food, bad food. And discuss foods that provide, I like to look at food as in there's certain foods that provide brain fuel that you need to fuel yourself with daily, and some foods like sweets, they aren't great for lasting energy, which is why we eat them occasionally. So it's just comparing foods differently, as in we focus on our growing foods that we need for brain fuel, and these are ones that we eat most of the time, and that's why we're not having donuts every night for dinner, because these are foods that taste sweet. They don't give us lasting energy, and they're not the best brain food. So we just save them for fun time, and we just have them occasionally, and just not ever just calling them good and bad, because kids can internalize this like, oh, I must be bad because all I like is chocolate, which some kids do, and it's like, well, don't deprive them of it. Let them have it occasionally. When discussing one's health, it shouldn't be associated with a number on the scale. One can be healthy at all weights and sizes. So I definitely emphasize this with parents, and how this comes across, and what the child weighs, and who weighs what. And we don't have a number that's going to determine how healthy we are, and as we get older and check cholesterol levels, and we see how healthy our body is, or that's really what judges how healthy we are is what our labs tell us versus that number on the scale. So foods with staying power, which I recommend serving for 80% of the time, and these foods would be foods that provide a lot of fiber at meals, that have fruits, whole grains, vegetables, and beans. All these foods have great fiber in them. Proteins, and I like for proteins and nuts, nut butter, meats, fish, egg, and beans, and fats, especially the essential fatty acids, the poly and monounsaturated fatty acids, the avocados and nuts and fish and olive oils and hummus and olives, and certainly include some cheese because it has protein in it, and the meats with good protein. They include fat too. Salad dressings because you're eating your salads, and that's good too. So these foods just take longer to digest. Um, and certainly the foods with fiber in them also have carbohydrates in them. So these foods are just really great staying power. So I always encourage families to include these foods at every meal, especially kids' lunch boxes, and as much as you can in their breakfast, because this gives them more staying power, that they're not going to be starving a few hours later. It's going to last longer. And so the foods to limit that aren't filling and aren't nutrient dense, so but it's not like to completely avoid them. So these 20% of the time foods, that would be just straight sugar. The dietary guidelines recommends a 10% or less of total calories. So that would be the 40 to 50 grams a day of sugar limit for kids. So under 3 is 25 grams. And hidden sources can be found in soda, juice, granola bars, breakfast cereals, and desserts. And I look forward to, in 2018, the food labels, it'll be mandatory to have on the food labels a line that indicates added sugar. So it will make it a lot easier to figure this out, because right now food labels include natural occurring milk sugar and fruit sugar on the total sugar on the food labels. So we don't count fruit sugar, the naturally occurring sugar, and the milk sugar as part of this added sugar. So that helps you just kind of separate that out, because kids need milk, and I don't want you to cut down on that. Refined and processed carbohydrates to avoid, just because they don't stick with you long, certainly to 20% of the time, including a handful of chips in the lunch, is certainly fine. But if this is the main thing that they snack on every day, and in addition to wanting to last through the day, they're not going to stick with them very long. So those refined and processed carbohydrates include the foods that are like chips, crackers, white bread, white rice. They're just not lasting energy. But again, if you're including these foods with the other foods, with their vegetables and fruits and whole grains and some protein, then it will be more lasting. When it comes to juice, American Academy of Pediatrics recommends limiting to 4 ounces for children over 1, and for children over 7, 8 ounces limit per day. So definitely kind of check in of where you are with how much juice your child is drinking. And I feel a little bit better about smoothies when they're using full fruit and Greek yogurt, and there's more added there to that. But it's good to check in with the smoothies too, if it's an ounce of juice added to the smoothie. But if it's solid fruit that you're pureeing in, then certainly get credit for eating whole fruit if you're doing the whole fruit. So just things to consider. And again, you as the parent you are the decision makers of what gets served in the household. And so the more that you're serving those foods 80% of the time, that's giving your kids lasting energy, and you know that they're getting activity and as much exercise as that 60 minutes a day of activity. And then you're doing that, they are growing certainly normally of how they should be, and it's nothing that you're doing. And you're giving them the best healthy chance. And so now I will take some time for questions if anyone has them. And there's a chat box that those can be typed in. And if anyone's listening to this remotely, you can always email me a question if you have it, or feel free to give me a call. I do offer a free 15-minute phone consult on my website. If you just have a few questions you want to get answered, then you can schedule that there at portlandpediatricnutrition.com. Top right-hand corner, there is a book now button, and you can schedule your free 15-minute phone call with me, and then we can have a chance to talk about your question, your concerns. Well, thank you for listening, and I'll take some time to answer any of the questions you want to type in at the end.